Hey there, it's producer Casey. I hope your long, cold, lonely winter is waning and your spring is sprung. I'm glad to report that I've wrested control of our show back from our less than trusty AI companion P3Z Nuts. And before we get into today's episode, I wanted to hit some quick top of show housekeeping.
Little darling, I feel the ice is slowly melting.
As always, if you dig what we do, it would be a huge help to the show if you like and subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. If you do, we might just share your review on the show. In fact, let's read one now. James 8008 says, 5 stars, best Beatles podcast. This is the best, most informative, and most accurate Beatles podcast out there today. Robert is very knowledgeable and has excellent guests and topics. It is most enjoyable. I highly recommend it to any Beatles fan. Shit. I think this is a review of Something About the Beatles. An excellent podcast. You should definitely check it out maybe after you listen to our podcast. Let me try this again. Okay. Here's one from HB1840. It says, 1 star, waste of time. I guess it's okay if you can take 5 minutes of idiotic talk for every minute of Beatles info. Harsh. Not entirely untrue. That's kind of a downer. Let's see if we can end on a brighter note. Here we go. Okay, our most recent review came a couple weeks back from iRes, and it reads, 5 stars, the best, A++. These guys are literally the only podcast I listen to. Comedy and music in one place. I love it. Thanks, guys. You hit all my buttons and love all the Chicago references. A++. Thank you, iRes. We appreciate the good reviews to bury the bad ones, and we are glad you enjoy the show, and we appreciate your review. If you're interested in supporting our lovely, ad-free, independently produced podcast, there's a whole bunch of ways you can help out. Check out UntitledBeatlesPodcast.com, where you can find links to buy Untitled Beatles merch on TeePublic. You can drop $1 in our PayPal tip jar, or if you're so inclined, you can support us through Patreon. Our Patreon supporters help sustain the show, and all subscribers get access to our exclusive Discord server, where TJ, Tony, and I hang out with fellow Beatle people. We talk music, we take suggestions, all kinds of fun stuff and shenanigans. And speaking of Patreon, I'd like to send out a special thanks, Mo, to our Star Club members, including Long Live George Harrison, Glenn K. from Iowa, Matt Kaharski, Beetle Dave, Susan from Baltimore, Bert Chide, Joanne S., David S. from Chicago, no relation as far as I know, Max Como representing in Montreal, Matt Meyer from Spring Hill, Tennessee, Mick B. from Minnesota, Nowhere Doug Tabor, Stephen A., Mary Kate, Skylar, Mr. D. Sticker, Michael S., and Kat V. Thank you so much. We couldn't do the show without you. And again, if you're interested in joining this group of luminaries, you can find info at UntitledBeatlesPodcast.com. Okay, I've said too much.
Oh no, I've said too much.
That was for you, TJ. Thanks, everybody, for bearing with me. Let's get to the show.
Red Rose Speedway, 50th anniversary, Elf anniversary, I.
I was so immersed in your Roman numeraling, I totally didn't slate correctly.
Oh, second sticks. I sticks. 3, 2, 1.
Untitled Beatles Podcast.
Second sticks is what they call the touring iteration of sticks when Dennis DeYoung says, fuck off.
You like that?
I've said this a million times. Larry Gowan's the very best Larry Gowan on the planet. No one's a better Larry Gowan than Larry. I'm the best Dennis DeYoung, still to this day.
Lady, when you're with me, I'm smiling.
Welcome to the Untitled Beatles Podcast. Thank you for listening. I'm Tony.
And I'm TJ.
TJ. I like that.
It's a new year. I'm giving it a different emphasis.
It's a new year. It's April. It's a new year. It's 2023 at the time. We're enjoying a very cold spring day here in Chicago, wouldn't you say?
Global warming my ass.
Right.
Those people.
Snowball. Right. See, I brought a snowball into Congress. Global warming doesn't exist.
It's melting. Maybe it does. You're indoors, guy. Yeah, it's 12 degrees in Chicago as we record this thing. And but cold. Here's the tricky thing is it has been a frighteningly calm in my 48 years around the sun living in Chicago.
Yeah.
Chicago. I do not remember a winter this like we've had like weeks. There was a week in March a decade ago where it was like 75 degrees. But
yeah.
I don't remember a year that had this little, like, we didn't have that one big, like knock you in the ding dong snowstorm.
No, we did not. No. Yeah, we've been very fortunate because the rest of the country, at least, is getting pretty slammed with like atmospheric rivers and all sorts of, coastal life seems pretty dire these days. So all our coastal listeners, hey, stay safe out there. All right.
Yeah. We love our coastal listeners, California,
everywhere,
Florida, everywhere.
Flew in from Miami Beach.
I wanted to thank my good friend John Barlow. John Barlow gave me, we play in a band together. And at practice the other day, his lady friend found a book, and it was the illustrated Beatles lyrics book from way back, like in the 70s, with all the kooky art for each song. And I hadn't seen that since I like checked it out from the library, probably in the late 80s. You know what I mean? And so it really brought back a lot of wonderful memories. So thank you, John Barlow. And look for that on eBay. I bet you can get it rather cheap. I think, or at a yard sale. I think it was like $2 at this yard sale.
And is the one you looked at? Because I had, and it's somewhere, it was like in paperback. It was like, it wasn't a hardback, and it started kind of, the seams started to separate because of looking at it so many times. But yeah, like that book was ubiquitous for a long time in like the 70s and 80s. And I don't know if is that something you can still like, do libraries have that? Can you walk into... And I've become a Barnes and Noble apologist. Like,
sure.
I can't explain it. I'm happy that they've survived. Like, I realize they fucked local bookstores. I'm not proud of that. But the way time works, when I see a Barnes and Noble close, like when Borders closed, I was sad, which is patently ridiculous. And I understand that it is. But at any rate, like, there's a new Barnes and Noble in Old Orchard Mall not far from us. And, it's just wonderful to walk in and see books everywhere and they've got a decent selection of vinyl. But is that a book that like a bookstore like that would still stock that used to be everywhere?
No, I'm pretty sure it's out of print. Yeah. Pretty sure. TJ, how sad were you when Sears Roebuck closed?
I was sadder when Roebuck closed because I think that was 40 years before I was born. I think the Roebuck Sears merger took place in 1740. But when Sears closed, I was actually quite pleased because for years Sears had become a shithole.
Hey, mister, your hardware's looking real good. This insulation's just right. Wool mufflers and full lace shears are what I want to wear tonight.
Tony, thank you to John. And in fact, I don't know how close you are to John, but if I were to meet him, I'd say, thank you, darling. And when I think thank you, darling, I think a track that is McCartney's greatest lost tune.
Oh.
Take it, Tony.
Take it, Tony.
Wait, which one is it? The tragedy song?
No, the song Thank You, Darling. Did you hear that one from the Red Rose Speedway sessions?
Wait, wait, yes. Yeah, I don't have them all like in my brain.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's kind of the vaudeville duet he sings with Linda.
Yes, I definitely took notes on that. Where the hell is it? Outtakes. Thank you,
darling.
3 minutes, 18 seconons.
Thank you, darling. Yeah.
We are going to talk about that.
Yeah.
I like that one. We're going to talk about that later because today, TJ, we are talking about Red Rose Speedway 50th anniversary this year. Holy crap.
Yeah, holy crap with asterisks where the A and the P are.
Thank you.
That's a story. I was sad when the A and P closed, although I was young. All right, we're talking Red Rose Speedway, which is 50 years old, which is insane. You know, it's this album. I'm going to start with a sweeping generalization for you, Tony. I know that I'm prone to hyperbole on occasion.
On occasion.
Occasionally in hot Beatle takes. I'm the Skip Bayless of Beatle talk. God forbid. Okay, I believe that no album in Paul McCartney's career, including the sessions surrounding it, are more Paul McCartney than Red Rose Speedway.
Wow.
No other. I'm not saying it's his best. I'm not saying it's his worst. This album and the sessions around it and the stuff that was pitched and the stuff that was rejected and then included and then has been bootlegged and resurfaced on that 2018 archive set show the whole picture of the beauty, the strangeness, the tossed off nature, the careful creations. It is everything. Red Rose Speedway is a definitive Paul McCartney record. And I've been listening to it every day for 3 weeks. This is going to be the thing that drives my wife. And like, I keep playing the second.
I think that would drive me crazy a little bit.
Oh my God. It's a lot of single pigeon around this house. I'm a lot like
you are getting, yeah. Well, luckily you found a seagull like me, and then we can commiserate out there. We'll talk about single pigeon.
You can be my seaside woman, please. Dainty little mama can't take it anymore.
That is wild. I mean, I see what you mean. Yeah, like this is kind of his 70s id. You know what I mean? I feel like it's Paul wanting to be in a band again, so he forms Wings. Like, he wants to be treated like the bass player. I'm not Paul McCartney of the Beatles. I'm the bass player in Wings, you know? And then I guess when Glyn Johns, who was the producer on this at first, started treating him like the bass player, Paul wasn't so into that. And said, no, I call the shots here.
Yes, and it also served Paul a reminder that it was going to be Paul McCartney and Wings.
Right.
So he's a bass player in Wings with his name first. And there's one person on the cover of the record, and it's the bass player in Wings.
It's the bass player, yeah.
Of course, this later replicated by the police, of course. That's why Synchronicity is just a big picture of Sting. At least the copy I have, the reissue.
There you go. Another artist inspired by Wings' second album, Red Rose Speedway. Yeah, man, we've gotten a lot of listener requests for this one, so here it is. It's celebrating 50 years on the planet. It came out April 30th, 1973 in the U.S., and it reached number 1, which is pretty wild, you know? So it worked, that whole Paul McCartney and Wings thing, and putting his big fat face on the cover with a rose stuffed in it.
And at least in the U.S., they put a sticker. I've got it right here. There's a sticker on the record itself, not even on the cellophane. Or maybe, take that back. When I bought this used, somebody might have kept it from the cellophane, but mine stuck to the cover, and it actually says Paul McCartney and Wings, just to make sure that people knew that this guy with the rose, hiding his mouth. If you're looking at this darkish cover in a record store, you'd know it's Paul McCartney. So after Wildlife tanked, EMI took great pains to make sure that this next album didn't tank. It's why it's not a double album.
Yeah.
Wildlife, as much as we want to, it's a little like McCartney too. God bless the revisionist history, but at the time, these are records that didn't sell. Initially, Wildlife for Paul's own company, and then for, Columbia in a panic after Back to the Egg and then McCartney, sure, they sold, but not what they were expecting. They were expecting the Billy Joel Springsteen level sales. So for this album to have been a huge fucking hit with a massive hit single followed up months later with Live and Let Die was such a resurgence for Paul McCartney at a time when the Red and the Blue albums were also around.
Oh, right.
So
yeah.
what a start to 1973, Tony, and how nice to commemorate right now. I know we're going to go track by track. This may be a long one, friends.
Yes. Yeah. buckle in and, pull your car, your engines up to the starting line and buckle up. It's going to be a long pace car follow. I don't know. I'm not into NASCAR. I don't know.
It's okay. But this is a great chance to drop faster from the self-titled George Harrison record.
Yes. Cue 45 seconds of annoying sound effects, like basically opening your window in Chicago in the summer. That's the sound of that song's intro. Red Rose Speedway received very mixed reviews upon its release, and it still receives mixed reviews to this day.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so funny how people are. I was reading 8 Arms to Hold You and kind of prep for this, and like those wonderful people who know so much about Paul, they hate side 2. It's so funny. Every song's like, you're opening with Single Pigeon? Come on. It's like an outright, just so funny.
Well, speaking of Single Pigeon, John Pigeon of Let It Rock magazine said at the time, listening to it takes about as much as going 10 rounds with a marshmallow fairy.
That's what I call my fluffernutters. Honey, I'll have a marshmallow fairy, please. Wink, wink.
Oh, you need fluff, fluff, fluff to make a fluffernutter. Marshmallow fluff and lots of peanut butter.
Now, John Pigeon, is that Lieutenant Pigeon? Or as they say in the UK, Lieutenant Pigeon? Have you ever heard? So I was in Oxfam, I think. I was in Nottingham at Oxfam, which is like a thrift store there that they have in the UK. And I'm going through the 45s, and I see this 45 for a song called Moldy Old Dough. And it's like this kind of instrumental by a band called Lieutenant Pigeon. And I was like, this is crazy. And then I looked it up. It was a number 1.
When?
In the UK in like 74. It's a UK number 1. It's a great song, but I was like, this is a number 1. And I think there's like Top of the Pops footage of like people like dancing to it.
Tony, are we about to break a UK act on this show? Are we about, is this drop we're about to play going to make this band huge?
Yeah, look for it. You're going to hear this in every Stranger Things episode to come. They're going to drop this Moldy Old Dough, Lieutenant Pigeon.
Coming up, we'll talk to the Doofer brothers, or maybe the Duffer brothers.
Our favorite Robert Christgau. Crisco.
I am going to Mount Kisco.
Said it was, quote, quite possibly the worst album ever made by a rock and roller of the first rank. And even the band didn't like it. In 1976, Linda said, Red Rose Speedway was such a non-confident record. We needed a heavier sound. It was a terribly unsure period. That to me speaks a lot to what's going on in this era. Like, he wants to be a band. He misses the Beatles, so he wants to be a band again. He wasn't into the, like, he didn't want to do the McCartney-Ram thing forever. He wanted that feeling again, playing out live. And this is when they're playing those universities, like showing up. They played like a cafeteria at lunch or something somewhere, just showing up unannounced and playing small halls. He wanted that Hamburg energy again, I think.
Well, and when you listen to the shows that preceded this release, that UK tour, you can hear a band trying to find itself, and that's kind of the rough and raw Hamburg sound of any of the live Paul stuff. That UK 72 tour is some of the most raw live McCartney other than the Star Club tapes.
I agree. Yeah. I think he's trying to fulfill that, tap back into that energy and get sweaty again or whatever, which is so funny that this Red Rose Speedway came out as it did, released as the single album with a lot of lightweight stuff on it. In fact, Wikipedia categorizes the album as soft rock.
Well, noted, if you can't get Lewison, you get Wikipedia.
Yeah, man.
Tony, before we get to the album, too, I wanted to kind of follow up on this kind of peak McCartney, for better or for worse, experience, in that if you look at the other albums that came out 50 years ago, I mean, here's the thing. You've got Paul McCartney, who is just coming off Wildlife and Mary Had a Little Lamb. You know, we talked about all this. And,
Huge.
And I mean, God, I love that key change so much. It's so sweet. But, you know, Tony, the Stones had Goat's Head Soup. I know it's not considered a classic, but it's an album I love.
I like that one too, yeah.
Dark Side of the Moon, Houses of the Holy, Quadrophenia.
Yeah.
Of course, Mind Games that year, too. I'd say not John's strongest album, an album I love, but I'm not going to put it in my top 1, 2, or it's not even my top 3 John solo album, is it?
Probably not.
Let's say that for a different conversation. But my point is, like, you've got seminal rock albums from then great rock bands, and I think that's one of the reasons that Red Rose Speedway was greeted with such disdain, because as much as My Love was a massive single, all of a sudden Paul is, I hate to credit Wikipedia, but Paul's kind of inventing soft rock with My Love. Now, the thing is, he's doing it better than anybody ever did, without question. But, you know, compare this, Tony, to, I mean, on the album cover, the kind of salute to Stevie Wonder in Braille. It's on the reissue. It's on the top. On the original Apple, it's here on the bottom. I've got a Columbia pressing where they keep the booklet and they do away with the Braille. Fuck you, Columbia. I'm sorry. Back to the egg didn't sell. Now you're giving an FU to Stevie Wonder. Come on now. At the same time, like, he clearly loves Stevie and he loves these other artists, but Dark Side of the Moon and Houses of the Holy, Steely Dan, Countdown to Ecstasy, maybe their most rock album before they kind of got jazzier, which I love, but like, and then Paul's got Single Pigeon and When the Night. While I love those songs, I don't think the context of rock in 73, Tony, did Paul any favors.
No, yes, I completely agree with you. Yeah, in the context of all those albums you mentioned, yeah, Red Rose Speedway just doesn't make it to that level. No, I don't think it does. I think for fans, I think this is a great record. I think you have to be in the mood for this record. I think you have to know what you're getting into. You're getting into a lazy, life's okay. This is a happy period in his life. Saturday, you know, very much like today, perhaps, if it was a little not 16 degrees.
It wasn't 11 degrees.
But, you know, we're having coffee. You know, our lives are all right. You know what I mean? For the most part.
Yeah. Last night, I lay around all over the place. So.
All over the place.
Don't get you pneumonia. It sounds like you jumped into a Lake Michigan there. It's very cold. I got one more bad review.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Tony.
No, it's okay. This speaks to what you were saying earlier, I think. Wings tour photographer Joe Stevens recalls, I thought Red Rose was a disaster, and so did everyone connected with it, except Paul. And I think that's what you were saying earlier, how this is like just the most Paul record. It showcases his wizardry with ballads, you know, and with My Love, which got in the R&B charts, we'll talk about that. But yeah, then it's got rock from the stuff that didn't make it on there. It's got the rockin' stuff. It's got the kind of weird experimental stuff with loop and all that. He's almost tapping into that White Album thing. Originally, it was going to be 2 albums. This is the Whiter Album or whatever, I guess.
It's what Ringo always called this Red Rose Speedway. The Whiter Album.
Yeah, the Redder Rose Speedway. The Red Rosier Speedway.
Shut up. It's a bloody Red Rose Speedway. Shut up.
Well, where does this rank for you? In your Macca ranking, where does this album rank for you, TJ?
Oh man, it's every time we review a Paul album, I'm going to tell you the top 3.
There you go.
I mean, if we could play a long game of Would You Rather with McCartney albums, I'd rather hear Chaos and Creation than this.
Okay.
I'd certainly rather hear Ram than this, so the Ram might be my favorite. Yeah, I'd rather hear this over Wings of the Speed of Sound.
Yeah, okay. I agree. I agree with you on that. Yeah. Well, for me, this album ranks, it's beneath McCartney 2, Back to the Egg, and Wildlife, but I put it above Flowers in the Dirt, Speed of Sound, and London Town. It's a mixed bag, man.
See, Flowers in the Dirt, man, like everybody else my age was rebelling, and I was just cozying up to I Know You Want Her Too. Camp, I'm serious. Like, I love that.
Oh, I know.
If I could meet Paul again, I would say to him, Paul, my revolver was Flowers in the Dirt. Just to see his face. I just see the face. It was Paul looking at me like I was fucking nuts. Yeah, this record, I think, when taken the context of all the songs surrounding it and some of the live tracks that made their way as B-sides and onto the reissues and all that, there's so much greatness. Wildlife, some of the tossed off stuff, this first McCartney album, McCartney 2, I like my tossed off McCartney with ornamentation and beauty. And my pops, the guy who's still angry about the Only Love Remains 45 being a different mix, loves Red Rose Speedway, Tony.
Oh, did you have any good reviews by any chance?
Yeah, I do. Oddly enough, Rolling Stone gave this a good review after bashing almost all of McCartney's early solo stuff. So yeah. Rolling Stone kind of turned the corner. And one of my favorite reviews, and again, I can't pronounce last names. I think Stephen Thomas Erlewine from All Music or All Music Guide. He reviews a ton of stuff. He's a rock critic. His summary of a lot of the McCartney records on allmusic.com, I'm probably getting the URL wrong. I also said URL. Grandpa got run over by a reindeer. What am I saying URL for? Remember that one? Grandma got run over by a reindeer.
Yeah, man.
Walking home from our house.
When they played that on the radio, it was like, all right, the radio's doing something different.
Yes, and then Elmo and Patsy were at the Capitol on January 6th, I think.
Oh, no.
She'd been drinking too much eggnog.
It's All Music something or other, but the review of this it's a telling review, too, because it kind of notes that if a McCartney record that feels so unfinished is by Paul McCartney, shouldn't we salute it, is basically his thesis. That it's not like we love Brian Wilson for doing kind of the tossed off creative excursions. Why can't we treat Paul McCartney the same way? This record is still genius, even if it doesn't appeal to all of our sensibilities. It's a brilliant record.
It's pretty good, man. It is good.
Right.
Originally conceived as a double LP, EMI thought the material was not up to snuff to elicit 2 long-playing records, clocking in at 1 hour and 15 minutes. So they got it down to 1. And Denny Lane, obviously, Denny Lane, there is a barber showing photographs. Sorry. Denny Lane and...
Help! Denny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes.
But so, yeah, it was originally this double LP. It had more rockers on it, but it got slimmed down to this soft rock, according to Wikipedia, album. And yeah, so Denny Lane and new lead guitarist Henry McCullough were kind of bummed out, that Denny's songs weren't on there, and also that the heavier material did not make it onto the single LP.
However, Denny Lane's I Would Only Smile apparently was also on a Bay City Rollers album, because it's exactly what it sounds like.
I like that one.
I'll begin my story now on Saturday night. Girl, we've seen our ups and downs on Saturday night.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Teaser. We are going to come up with our own single LP Red Rose Speedways based on the double LP.
Yes, and I have cheated, and that's my tease, is I've got a cheat code for your parameters.
Okay. All right. You jailbroke the assignment. Good for you.
Hey, it's honor of St. Patty's. I pulled a Thin Lizzy. Tonight there's going to be a somewhere in the town. Tell me Thin Lizzy's Irish.
They are, man. They are, yes. Phil Lynott. Well, Phil Lynott and Thin Lizzy. Thank you.
Okay.
Bass player.
That's when they toured at as right. Phil Lynott comes first because he plays the bass.
Because he plays the bass. Yeah, he's the bass player. You'll like this. Henry McCullough played on the original cast recording of Jesus Christ Superstar. In fact, there he is now.
Yeah, well, those were originally, like, even the original Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat album was meant to be like a rock. Andrew Lloyd Webber wanted to be Pete Townsend.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was inspired by the rock opera thing, and then, but like Joseph and Evita and Jesus Christ Superstar started out as like rock concept, like rock opera on albums.
I always thought he wanted to be Pink Floyd because he ripped off Echoes. For,
oh, totally.
Right.
Oh, from Metal.
From Metal, yeah. 71, I think, yeah.
Great. It's my favorite Pink Floyd track, I think.
So we got new guitarists, we got Denny Lane, we got Paul and Linda, and then, of course, Denny Sywell on drums. He was playing on Ram. Glyn Johns was producing at first. Guess there was some tension with Paul, and he left the project.
Paul left the project. Glyn Johns took over, played bass.
Did it all. Yeah. Johns was thought that Wings wasn't really a band. And that they weren't, up to...
You think?
Because he's been producing, funny. Speaking of Townsend, he's been producing The Who. He's been producing Zeppelin. And so I get that. Like, compared to The Who and Zeppelin, who are these, like... They're living and breathing as these bands. Like, that's their identity. I really do feel like Paul was in this, like, nice place where he liked to, like, hang out on his farm and hang out with Linda and travel and... be like a human being, which I totally get. To me, that's very healthy. But I also get where Glyn comes from with his like, oh, he's like reading the paper while Wings is smoking pot and going on some like endless jams, and he just wasn't into it, I guess.
Some of that, you talk about Paul's domesticity and general happiness. Remember, he's also still Paul, and he's fueled by the desire to create without anybody to check him. So there's also anxiety to what Paul McCartney's doing at this time and constantly churning out material. I think it was Henry McCullough who said they were always, when they weren't touring, they were rehearsing and they were writing and they were playing. So I think, that lead up 72 into 73, I think they were just constantly together. Again, like Beatles and Hamburg a little bit. What's so funny is the difference is they're playing small colleges for nothing, and the other guys are like, "Hey, man, the Joe Cocker and the Grease Band album didn't sell as many copies as Rubber Soul.
Yeah,
could you maybe pay us a little more, guys?" And no, but a few of us we're not going to Africa as well. So bye bye.
Right. It's hard to subsist on these ice cube sandwiches left over from the university cafeteria. So Paul ended up being the producer, So that's how that all went down. Yeah, actually, on April 17th, 1972, Glyn Johns told the press that he and Paul had a disagreement and he was leaving the project and, quote, "now we have respect for each other."
Yeah.
Yeah, man. All right, should we talk about the artwork and packaging real quick before we get into like track by track?
Yeah.
Question, TJ. Is this the worst McCartney album cover?
No. Driving Rain with the blurry photographs and the like.
I like that one. That one's all right. That one's real. That's just like a picture taken on his flip phone or something, right?
Yeah. And the back is the little tiny photos of the tiny blurry photos. Is this, I don't like New. I'm going to take this over New.
With the neon lights,
Yeah.
All right. I'll give you that. You know what, man? I've always had a problem with this album cover. I think that is why honestly, that's played an influence into my opinion of this record overall. I think if they had just taken a different picture, I think his face looks really muggy. So it's Paul. He's next to this motorcycle. He's making like a Mr. Bean face, with a rose like stuffed in his mouth, like, oh, like he's doing like Howie Mandel meets Jay Leno. Weird. And he's got that mullet. I know Gen Z are all about the mullet or whatever, but man, as an Xer, mullets just I had one. Like I had one, it was bad news. Did you have a mullet, TJ? Or did your faith not allow that?
No, it was less a faith thing and more I didn't want to get beat up. Short guys with mullets in the city.
And so mullet was a phrase, I think the Beastie Boys coined it. This is like in 92. So in the 80s, it wasn't called a mullet. People called it hockey hair or whatever, like, business up front, party in the back or whatever they called it back then.
Yeah.
But, this is also around the time of 85 Bears and Jim McMahon and stuff like that.
I'm the punky QB known as McMahon. When I hit the turf, I've got no plan.
So I had like spiked hair and the stupid like mullet in the back. Anyway, it reminds me of that time, a very awkward time in my life. So maybe I'm projecting my bullshit onto this album cover.
Would you be happier if Paul had a headband that said Roselle?
Or like Jimmy Nickel or something like that. Some sort of Jim McMahon.
The Beatle version of shouting out the commissioner.
Yeah, I guess it'd be like EMI, whoever owned like EMI or whatever.
Sir Joseph Lockwood and a headband.
Yeah, Sir
Jim McMahon is wearing a headband this afternoon that says Roselle. It's Roselle written on a white headband.
So Linda took the photo. I mean, I don't have a problem with the focus or anything like that. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know what this album cover is. They brought the motorcycle all the way from America for the photo shoot. And trivia, TJ. Untitled Beatles podcast exclusive.
Untitled Beatles podcast exclusive.
It was ridden across the Atlantic Ocean by Evel Knievel. Excuse me, Evel Knievel. A lot of people think it's Knievel. It's Evel Knievel.
Silent K.
Silent K. What do you think of this album cover? I know I just took a big dump on it, but what do you think of it?
My original version that I got at maybe Secondhand Tunes back in the day.
Good for you.
On Paul's head says it says BJ. and the hype stickers stuck to it. So touch this album with glove. This album's the original COVID.
Oh, I think we found where COVID started. Finally. It started from your used copy of Red Rose Speedway.
Yeah, and the booklet is kind of cool too. The fact that it comes with the booklet. I think what EMI did to kind of placate Paul when this was made a double album to a single album was keeping the gatefold and adding the booklet and having the braille. This was not a cheap album to produce. And, I think I mentioned my Columbia pressing of this, which is always so funny because it looks like a Springsteen or Billy Joel record. My Columbia pressing was got a really nice, smooth gatefold cover. It has the booklet. It's not attached to the gatefold. The booklet's like an insert, but there's no braille on this Columbia pressing. I think this was the last time this was pressed on vinyl because when Capitol got the rights back, they never reissued the McCartney albums again until the 2018 stuff. So I think to add the 12-page booklet, which is cool. It's very colorful. I'm glad Tipper Gore didn't see the second to last page.
Right. Yeah. It was a pop artist, a Scottish pop artist of Italian descent. He's knighted Sir Eduardo Paolozzi. I think that's how you say it. Not Pelosi.
And his partner Edelson.
At Solozzi Edelson Chevrolet in Elmhurst.
On York and Roosevelt Roads, where you always save more money. Yeah. Now, you mentioned the Braille message. That was a message to Stevie Wonder. It says, "We love you, baby." Apparently, Wings had also been hanging out with Telly Savalas.
When you're needing it bad, cause of rough times you bad, I'm gonna look at you and I'm gonna say, who loves you, baby?
Yeah, and Tony, on my copy after the message to Stevie, because this is an original Apple one, there's a note for the Wings Fun Club. For all information, send a stamped addressed envelope to London W1 4 Up UP, if you're in Northern Michigan, England. Not confusing at all for you Wings fans. On the Columbia copy that's, of course, been scrubbed, I'm guessing that by the early 80s, I'm not sure when this reissue was pressed. I'd guess the early 80s. The Wings Fun Club had disappeared, and George Harrison.
No more fun. No more fun. What do you get in the Fun Club? You get some swizzle sticks and some Happy Snappers and what else?
Some Lick-O-Mades. Can't eat that anymore.
Can't.
Look, in my day, Lick-O-Made.
Lick-O-Made. Wasn't that the Ali Sheedy vehicle? Lick-O-Made. Thank you.
Yeah, and George Harrison has a bit about this on the Living in the Material World. He satirizes this with a note. I'm not looking at the record, but something about for the Jim Keltner fan club.
Yes.
And that's a parody of this.
I love George trolling Paul. So 70s funny. Trolls.
Poor Paul.
I mean, he has all those gnomes. He's got a troll. So any other different released versions you want to hit here?
No, I mean, what I remember my first experience with this album, I bought this on CD. This is the original, I think it's spring of 88. I would have bought it that summer.
Wow.
And this is the original CD. And it came with 3 bonus. I mean, this is the way CDs were treated at the time.
I was going to say, where's the 12-page booklet? So you open it up and it's 2 pages, one of which is all white, no words. The other one is just print of the song titles, and that's it.
It's worse. It's quick notes. This compact disc contains 3 extra tracks not included on the record and cassette versions of Red Rose Speedway. Then it gives information about I Lie Around, Country Dreamer, and The Mess are all bonus tracks on this. So what was cool about this in 88, in addition to the record, you got I Lie Around, Country Dreamer, and The Mess all remastered for the first time. Then they issued this again on CD in 93, but only in the UK as part of what they called the Paul McCartney collection. I've showed these before. This is they remastered just about everything up through All the Best, I'm pretty sure, and the latter stuff wasn't remastered because it was kind of concurrent, but where then you get the booklet. They kind of tried to correct the issues of the earlier 80s pressings. And you get the full booklet in here, but the remastering isn't great, and it's different bonus tracks. The bonus tracks here are, you get Sea Moon, you get High, The Mess, and I Lie Around are all on this. So Country Dreamer's been kicked off, and I think moved to Band on the Run.
That makes kind of sense, I guess, yeah.
But yeah, and then this didn't get a proper remaster from 1993 until 2018, when it became part of the McCartney collection. And as I say about all the McCartney archive stuff, the 2018 remaster, whether you have the box, which I don't, or you stream it, I've got it on vinyl, it's the best way to hear the record. It sounds lovely. It's not remixed, but in the remastering, the 88 remaster was a little too primitive. The 93 was too CD, Loud Wars harsh. They finally created, like they did with Ram and McCartney and Wildlife, a very warm Red Rose Speedway that doesn't dull it. It sharpens it.
That's great.
Yeah,
man. Actually, I love the production on this record. So, yeah, should we go track by track?
I got to go.
Untitled Beatles Podcast. Like and subscribe.